If there's one message you'd like to share with people, what might it be?
I would have to say I see a lot of people that are really sick, and I believe if you're breathing, your body's capable of healing. So don't lose hope. Know that you can heal.
Can you share a little bit about your background and the work that you do?
Absolutely. So I am a naturopathic practitioner. I have a small clinic in Boerne, Texas, and I see patients. I work with them one on one to help them regain their health. I also work with people to help them improve their longevity, their quality of life as they're aging. I'm very, very interested in longevity. I started out working in geriatrics, and I always tell people when you start out looking at the end, you know what you don't want. I'm always interested in helping people have a higher quality of life as they age.
Hey there, if you'd like to support this show and help us continue producing this kind of content, please visit startwithvalues.com. There's a link in the show notes and pre-order my forthcoming book. It's packed full of tools, insights, techniques to help you live a values-aligned life, to reduce stress, increase fulfillment, and it makes a great gift. So perhaps it's something you could share with someone else who you care about. That would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you again and all the best. Let's get back to the episode.
I do all sorts of cool things in my clinic. Lots of interesting IV therapies, supplementation, peptides, peptide bioregulators, all sorts of fun stuff.
Excellent. And what about your own journey as an athlete and some health challenges that you may have experienced along the way?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I grew up in a very, very healthy home. Health was definitely prioritized. My mom made home cooked meals. We didn't really eat processed food. Um, lot of good examples growing up, and I got into endurance sports in my 20s. I started lifting weights when I was about 15. So I was always interested in athletics, but I started doing triathlons and marathons, and in my 30s, went through a really stressful period, quit sleeping,
Mm,
and kept racing. That worked out really well for me.
mhm.
It was a disaster. And through that journey of getting really, really sick, I figured out that I had to be my own doctor, that I had to, when no one else could help me or seemed real interested in figuring it out, I had to keep working on it. And that's kind of what led me to where I am now, is wanting to help people figure out things that weren't super easy, but there is always an answer and you can heal and get well.
It's interesting in our 30s we often do neglect things like sleep. I had that exact same experience and I'm like thinking, why is life so difficult? Suddenly I can't do the things that I want to do. I mean, I'm now 46 and I feel so much better than I did in my early 30s just as a result of making those lifestyle changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Mm,
it's wild what the foundational health things do for us, right?
yeah.
People want to biohack everything, and I'm like, get the foundation right first. All the other things are kind of a cherry on top, in my opinion, but you have to have the strong foundation.
Absolutely. So what exactly is regenerative health?
Yeah, so it's looking at root cause and understanding that not interestingly enough, someone can have very damaging emotional experience that can make them get physically sick. We don't hear or see that really talked about a lot in traditional or allopathic medicine, but it's absolutely real. And when you see people that have experienced some very traumatic things in their life, you understand that um, there's more than just physical illness or a toxic environment or Lyme disease or right things like that.
Mhm.
So it's really getting to the root of what's creating the symptoms and addressing the root cause so the body can heal and the person can get well and move on with their life.
Okay. Because living with elevated cortisol and adrenaline, ultimately something's going to go wrong. You'll experience disease, and people don't often associate that with these thinking patterns, rumination or anxiety. It's just,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I've got these symptoms, so I'll treat them with creams or pills or whatever, and
Hmm.
you're not addressing the root cause.
Totally agree.
Mm. So this is a holistic approach to rewiring that.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. And it's often things like adrenal dysfunction comes into play, right? And then it's, kind of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. But for many people, there's a period of this really heightened
Mm.
sense of everything, not being able to sleep well, being in kind of this fight or flight mode all the time. And then the adrenals burn out, and that leads to other problems, hormone dysfunction, thyroid dysfunction, other issues, elevated. If your blood glucose or if your cortisol is elevated, it's going to bring your blood glucose up. That's problematic over time, right? So there's so many processes, disease processes that can happen from just prolonged chronic stress.
And stress is a habit. I often say this in workshops. Stress, it can almost feel uncomfortable when stress is not there. If you've been practicing stress for the past 10
Yes.
years. So there's a process of unraveling that. It's not kind of like I can just grab a meditation app and I'll be good. Obviously, it's a process.
I agree with you 100%. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think that we all get used to the state we're in. I asked a lady one time that I was working with. I was just starting to work with her and I was doing a consult, and I was asking her about the stress in her life. And I said, "Is your home life stressful?" And she's like, "No, not really." And I said, "Okay, can you tell me a little bit about it?" She was in her late 50s. She was raising two of her grandchildren and also taking care of her mother who had Alzheimer's.
Mm.
And I went, "Wait, just repeat what you just said to me." And she repeated it and gave me a really funny look. And I said, "You know, your child is supposed to be raising your grandchildren, and caring for a parent that has Alzheimer's or dementia is very challenging. It's very emotionally draining. So those are two big stressors in your life that you're just used to them, right?
Yeah.
They've become normal to you, but it doesn't mean they're not stressful." And so getting people to kind of think about what they're experiencing, kind of looking at it from the outside looking in and go, "Yeah, I guess that is stressful."
What does a naturopath actually do?
We do a little bit of a lot of things. Again, trained in root cause medicine, right? So addressing what caused the symptoms to begin with. So not like, "Here, let me give you a medication for that symptom." Why did you get that symptom to begin with? What's going on in the body that there's dysfunction happening? So that's how we're approaching it through that lens. Um, and we usually have a lot of different tools, at our disposal.
Hey there, Brad here, and this is not an ad. This is me saying thank you for connecting with this podcast. I would like to offer you a free gift. If you visit bradleyhook.com/gift, you'll find something very special there just for you. Now back to the episode.
Homeopathics, nutraceuticals. Um, I work with a medical director, so I'm able to use some medicines and do some things through his license, that really give people just a big boost when they're fighting something. I was just looking at a lady's labs today that came back. We did a total tox test through Vibrant, and we looked at heavy metals, mold, environmental toxins, Lyme disease, and then we did blood labs. And she nailed every single one. And so, these are people that are sick. Like they come in and they're
Mhm.
like, I'm 50, but I feel like I'm 80. Well,
Mhm.
that's not normal, right? And so, helping people understand that there's lots of factors that got you here. You get this toxic load over time that the body's just, I can't keep up. And so you have to support it, get rid of those things, and then nourish it, give it the pieces that it needs so it can heal and you can be whole again. But the body's incredibly capable.
So you can detect heavy metal exposure, toxins, mold even from blood tests?
No, those tests are through urine.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that test is actually through urine that I do. But yeah, you can see a lot of wild things.
Interesting. So mold, I never really thought of that, but what kind of conditions can that trigger if you have high mold exposure, and can you get rid of it?
You can get rid of it, yes. I see a lot of women, it really seems to affect their nervous system. Um, just kind of this heightened state. See a lot of people with breathing issues, lung issues, just a chronic cough. Um, it really depends on the person, right? Everyone does not present exactly the same, but I definitely notice that those people have a very heightened. There's not just that calm, chill.
Mm-hmm.
Their nervous system is not happy because of those toxins in there, and they don't feel well. They typically don't sleep well. They don't
Mm-hmm.
recover well. Yeah, it can be gnarly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you would help them by putting in place a plan to reduce
Hmm.
that gradually over time. I mean, I suppose there probably are medicines that can clear it out, but there might be side effects to hitting it really hard in one, with one kind of intervention. It's better to gradually heal.
I remind people that it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
in a
Mm.
in a racing analogy, you know, you didn't get sick overnight, you don't get well overnight. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, healing is not this linear path forward, right? We still have, we might be on a healing journey and a parent dies or a child gets sick or someone loses their job or there's a divorce. Those things affect our ability to heal,
Mm.
right? They impact us
Yeah.
physically, emotionally. Getting people to understand it's a journey. You didn't get here overnight, but you can and will get well. Just don't give up.
Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So all the best.
Slow and steady wins the race. And I find with most people that when you can get them in the right mindset, it works very well.
Mm. So why do we lose muscle mass as we age, and what can we do about it?
Yeah. So again, when you start out seeing people that are frail, you go, I don't want to do that. How can I avoid that?
Mm.
um, so we lose muscle mass as we age, right? Just in the aging process. One thing being our hormones start to shift, they start to get lower. That has an impact on our ability to maintain muscle mass. And then I think one of the biggest factors is protein synthesis. So when we're in our 20s, it takes about 20 grams of protein to create protein synthesis in the muscle. By the time we're 40, it takes 40 to 45 grams. That's a massive jump. So you have, women going, "Oh, I had an egg and a piece of toast for breakfast." And I'm like, "Well, your 6 grams of protein isn't going to cut it."
Mm.
And so you take not enough amino acids and not enough movement, and you put them together, and it's a little bit of a disaster.
Can you
So
describe what protein synthesis actually means for those who haven't heard the term?
I think an easy way to describe it is kind of waking the muscle up when it sees protein going, "Hey, take me in, use me to build yourself up."
Okay. And so that requires actually using the muscle and
Hmm.
consuming the right amount of protein in order to feed that muscle.
Absolutely. And we have to have an amino acid reserve to both heal and repair. So if you don't have enough muscle to begin with, your body becomes catabolic, starts using the muscle that's there, the protein that's there in the muscle, And then let's say you're in your 70s and you get really sick. Well, there's no amino acid reserve for the body to start healing, right? So it's important for a lot of reasons, not just lean mass. It's amino acids are required for so many things in our body.
And in order to get the right amount of protein, where should people look? Is it a wide range of protein sources? I know it's a controversial topic. There's vegans over here who say you can get bulky with just vegetables. But from my own personal research, it seems like a well-rounded diet is the best way.
Yeah, in terms of protein, I always tell people, please don't be married to your diet. Don't treat it like a religion.
True.
Have the intelligence and be open-minded enough to change your thought process, right?
Mm.
And I always say, don't shoot me. I'm just the messenger, just giving you valuable information. So all protein is not created equal.
Mm-hmm.
From everything I've studied, read, personal experience, meat, particularly red meat, is so valuable. It is so nutrient dense and very absorbable protein.
Yeah.
Egg is great. If you tolerate dairy, dairy's great. Vegan and vegetable proteins tend to be problematic for people to digest and absorb. So people will be like, oh, I'm using a vegan pea protein in my shake. And I'm like, maybe not. Right. So again, it's not that I have anything against it. It's just, if you want to do the best thing for your body, let's look at it from that perspective instead of being emotional about it. And I think because it's become such a heated topic, people become very emotional about their diet.
Yeah, it's just yet another polarizing topic.
Totally.
You're either a carnivore or you're a vegan. What's it going to
Yeah.
be? It's kind of like there's a whole spectrum in between.
Yes, exactly. And not everyone thrives on the same thing.
Mhm.
I'm a really big on, hey, I'm going to give you some recommendations. Oh, but also you live in your body. You know how you feel. Pay attention to that. That's valuable information, right? So for some reason, we reach, our teens or early adulthood, and we just kind of turn that little intuition thing off. And it's like, no, we have that for a reason. It's really important. Like, tune in. Those red flags are there for a purpose. They're telling you something and you need to pay attention. So I'm really big on paying attention to your body and how you feel, because we don't all thrive on the same exact amount of macros. If I'm going to give someone a recommendation, I'm going to say 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight. It's a really good starting place, but also play around with it. If you don't feel good on that, then make adjustments and figure out where you do feel well.
That's a nice, clear recommendation. And as you said, ramping it up a little bit as you get into your 40s, 50s, and beyond, which is kind of unintuitive. I've seen older people, even in my own family, and they start to eat less and less and less.
Yeah.
And as a result, that snowball effect of frailty just seems to increase rapidly with age.
Absolutely. I mean, I test women all the time, and they show up in their labs as being malnourished. And they're like, oh, but I'm 5 pounds heavier than I used to be. And I'm like, okay.
Mm.
Let's think about what we're putting in our body and how we're nourishing it, and maybe focus just a smidge less on the scale. The scale's one tool, right? It's one
Yeah.
piece of information.
And how important is it to lose fat and try and have a reasonable muscle to fat balance?
I mean, I think it's very important,
Mm.
right? We're in this society that, like, we want to make everything okay, and fat shaming. Okay, I'm not saying you should fat shame someone, but also let's not sugarcoat it and tell people that it's okay to be 100 pounds overweight, because it's not. Your
Mm.
body is now supporting, twice the size or 1.5 times the size that it should be. Like, your heart can't handle that. Your kidneys can't handle that. Your vascular system, like, everything has to work so hard. And if you choose to do that, that's your choice. But let's not pretend like it's okay and it's healthy, because it's not.
you just don't see many overweight old people. That's the thing that I always say is they don't make it.
Yeah, they don't. They
Yeah.
don't. I mean, you come to the States and our statistics are staggering.
Yeah.
They're not good.
Mhm.
And I think there's lots of people that maybe don't know. I always have to back that up with, we have a lot of information at our fingertips. If you're interested, can it be confusing? Sure. But at least take a step in the direction of your health, right? I think if you want to make those changes, there's lots of resources available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so worth it. I've worked with many, many people who had kind of given up and they were in that state of apathy. Well, this is just me. This is my life.
Mm-hmm.
And through doing exactly what you said, one step, literally,
Mm-hmm.
micro habits. Okay, I'm going to walk around my house once per
Yeah.
day. And then that becomes twice. And then that becomes 3 times. And 6 months later, they're going for a 5-kilometer jog and feeling
Yep.
better than they've felt in years. It's just about small steps in the right direction. There's plenty of time.
Absolutely. I mean, this goes back to, you didn't get here overnight, you don't get out overnight. But if every day you make a little bit of progress, you'll get better.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about peptide bioregulators. What are they?
Oh gosh, I think they're like the coolest thing. So there is a doctor in Russia that clinically studied these for over 40 years. And I learned about them through a doctor, a scientist, and attorney here in the US that had done some work with him and is actually currently still conducting studies on them in people. They are, right, so we have very long chains of amino acids that are proteins. We have shorter chains of amino acids that we know as peptides, like BPC 157 or CJC or ipamorelin, or those kind of things that people have become more familiar with. Peptide bioregulators are these little tiny chains of peptides, chains of amino acids. They're either 2, 3, or 4 amino acids strung together. And what makes them so special is they're so small, they can get into places where other things can't. They can cross the cellular and nuclear membrane. They can cross the blood-brain barrier. And I heard Dr. Lawrence say it in the most eloquent and easy to understand way. He said, peptide bioregulators repair the repair systems in our body.
Mm.
And I was like, that's perfect. It's so easy to understand. You don't need a degree in anything to understand that. So yeah, I mean, they're so tiny, they get in there and attach to the DNA. And there are 20 some odd bioregulators for specific systems of the body. And you can take them, some of the clinical research that Dr. Kavinson in Russia did was so compelling in terms of the increase in lifespan that people saw using them just for a couple of years, and better quality of life, right? Because it's healing these things that are starting to break down as we age.
And how do you take them? Is it oral? Is it injected?
Oral. It's like a little supplement. So it's really easy and accessible, right? Not everybody can pop in for an IV, but these are just a little supplement and super easy to take.
How do you know which ones to take? And where do these where do they come from?
Yeah, so they come from 12-month-old calves is where these aminos are
Okay.
taken from. How you know what to take. So I do like a longevity protocol with people, and we will test them through true diagnostics. We'll look at DNA methylation and telomere length.
Mm.
At the end of the time when they're done taking them, we'll retest and they can see some of those changes. Now, some of the changes like DNA methylation takes longer to see a big change in that. You see a faster change in the length of the telomeres, right? So those little end caps on the end of your DNA, think of like the cap of a shoestring, the little plastic part. We know that the longer those are, there's a correlation between length and length of life, right? How old you are biologically.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can look at that. And then this test gives us some indication as to how certain parts of our body are aging. And you can also, listen to how someone's feeling, issues they've had throughout their life. You can look at blood tests as well and get a really good idea. If someone's kidneys are struggling, gosh, put them on a kidney bioregulator. So there's multiple ways that you can kind of figure out what to put them on.
That's pretty exciting to know that there are these tools available, supplements available. So this is kind of what Gary Brecker has been talking about, right? With the MTHFKR gene or whatever it is. It's
The
become a
alphabet
whole
gene.
big thing on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is genetics, right? That's looking at your genes and seeing where you have these genetic SNPs that can cause an issue for you. And, I always remind people you can have a genetic SNP and not have a problem.
Okay.
So you have lifestyle, right? You have the genes, right, which is the gun, and then you have lifestyle, which is the trigger. And so the things we do turn these genes on and off. And so people will come in and go, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling well and I have MTHFR. And I'm like, well, that's not exactly how it works. You can, many people did not hit the lottery genetically, and yet they're very healthy and have a very long, healthy life because they're living a healthy lifestyle. And so you have other people with much better gene pool per se, but they're doing everything wrong, right? They're not managing their stress, crappy diet, sleep is not a priority, no exercise. Well, good luck.
Yeah. So if someone's interested in exploring these peptides, where's a good starting point? Because I know many people just self-diagnose. They'll go and order a whole plethora of things off the internet. Best to come and see someone like yourself to really figure out what's going to be most impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. I have actually a spot on my website that's specifically about the peptide bioregulators. And if people want to work with me like for a year and do them based on their issues, their testing, I do that.
Can it harm you to take the wrong peptides, or are they pretty, it's not going to do any damage?
They're incredibly safe. I mean, they're literally amino acids.
Yeah.
In the testing that I heard Dr. Cavinson say in a lecture that he gave, I was listening to, he said they've never had anyone have an adverse reaction. And I heard Dr. Lawrence say about the worst thing he'd ever seen happen is somebody got too excited and started everything at once and got a little diarrhea.
That sounds like me. That's fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do everything and it'll be ready by Friday.
You understand.
Yeah. That's not the worst thing that can happen.
No, they're incredibly safe. So that's the other thing, it's really nice. Like I work with people that have allergies and intolerances to all sorts of things. And I've put some people on them that, celiac and just, a whole myriad of health issues, and they've done incredibly well.
And is there like a full spectrum peptide that you could take, like a multivitamin, or better to be specific?
So there's not one that covers everything. There are certain ones that seem to have a bigger overall impact through Dr. Cavinson's research. In particular, the pineal, what affects the pineal gland and the thymus and the blood vessel. Those three seem to have a profound effect across the board. So they can be used in conjunction with any of the others. But there's a lot of research around those being very, very valuable. And I'm sure it's partly because we live this lifestyle where we're on all the time and we always have our cell phone with us and we're right, just mad amounts of stimulation that end up taking a real toll on our endocrine system over time.
What about other supplements? Do you recommend anything else in general? I've recently been taking niacinamide, which I've found
Mhm.
great as a surfer who spends a lot of time in the sun. I feel like it's a useful supplement for skin health. Anything that you would recommend people pay attention to?
I'll give you top three. So pretty much everyone, right? There's always the odd person that's not, but pretty much everyone is deficient in magnesium. I am the biggest fan of magnesium. Love it. Like a good magnesium glycinate powder before bed, and it just calms the nervous system. Again, think overstimulation.
Yeah.
I love a good desiccated beef organ supplement. I think it's better than for me, it's better than any multivitamin I've ever taken.
Okay.
And then I love adrenal support. Again, so many people are so overstimulated and just have a lot going on. And I, in particular for women, right? Because we have the only thing in the human body that really atrophies and stops working, and that's the ovaries. When that happens, the adrenals take over about 30 plus percent of our hormone production. So we need our adrenals to be in fighting shape when that happens. And so I'm a big fan of making sure the adrenals have all the tools they need to be really robust as we start to age.
So the adrenals start to overproduce adrenaline, or
Well, not adrenaline. They produce other hormones
oh,
that the ovaries no longer produce.
got it.
And so we need them to be able to continue to produce, right, the adrenal hormones and the sex hormones. So
Yes,
that they get to take on this extra job.
got it. Okay. And differences for men and women, say we get to about the age of 50, or is it pretty much the same thing, taking a holistic approach? Or are there, some things that men should probably focus more on and a few things that women should focus more on?
While I tell women all the time, we're not small men. So, I think obviously you take an individual approach based on whether you're male or female.
Hmm.
But I think that the core things stay the same, right? We need good nutrition. Our cells are made up of what we eat. Think about that for a second, right? You're like, whoa.
Hmm.
And then, sleep. Sleep is when we recover and repair. Sunlight. We need sunlight to thrive. And, sunlight has been demonized. And I disagree. I think, there's more and more research coming out that actually more people get melanoma that are chronically exposed to blue light all day long. Very interesting study with naval men that they did, and they looked at men that worked outside all day, inside part of the day, outside part of the day, and inside all day. And the most melanoma was in people that were inside all day and in places where they typically don't get sun. So it kind of blows that theory out of the water. And I always think, like, I'm a super logical person.
Hmm.
How do we survive as a species if the sun causes cancer? Right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Like, make it make sense. And so there's certain things that just inherently, I'm like, I can't buy that. I don't think we would have lasted this long if that was the case.
Hmm.
So I think just taking a common sense approach to things,
Yeah.
finding some moderation, which Americans generally struggle with. We're very extreme people, right? We're all or nothing. Like, it's all protein or all vegetables.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's funny when you look over time and you see it's like keto, this is the only way, and then it changes to, okay, no, it's carnivore, and then all of the influencers, 2 years later, are like, oh, sorry about that, we're fruit and meat. it's
yeah,
it's silly. It's silly. Yeah.
it is. And I think, I try to think again, I'm a super logical person. Sustainability.
Mm,
Who wants, and I love meat.
mm,
Like, if someone said you can only have one thing to eat for the rest of your life, it'd be a toss up between red meat and dairy for me.
for sure. Yeah.
Just being honest.
Hmm.
um, but, when you think about a sustainability point of view, not a lot of people are going to want to only have meat for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
There's too many other amazing things. And so I think when you just approach things with some common sense, it
Mm,
goes a long way.
yeah. No, I've witnessed people do extreme diet fads or engage in them.
Hmm.
One of my friends did the carnivore diet for several years and started
Hmm.
to have some quite extreme problems with digestion. So
Hmm.
it's a little bit of variety is probably a good thing. Mm,
Yeah, I think of it kind of as hormesis, right? We need some stressors.
yeah.
That's how we stay strong. And when
Mm.
you do the same thing over and over and over, eventually there's not really a stress associated with it. Your body just knows what it's getting.
Yes, that's a good point. So, actually ingesting certain vegetables which may have some natural toxins in them to protect the
Hmm.
plant, this is good for you in small doses.
Hmm.
It's great.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're a person that can't handle it, awesome. Don't
Mm,
eat it.
mm. Yeah,
But
exactly.
if you can, do. I think we've really gotten away from just finding a middle of the road with things. And I mean, just as the world as a whole, right? Everything's so extreme, particularly here in the States.
Hmm.
And I personally don't think that's where health lives. I think health lives in moderation, right? I always laugh because we're at this space and time when I constantly hear people, like, alcohol's a big one. It's basically, if you drink any alcohol, you will die and go to hell.
Hmm.
That's it. That's the only option for you. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see. Jesus made wine.
Yeah, exactly.
And wine's been around for a really long time.
Yeah,
And then you look at area of the world with a lot of centurions. A lot of them are drinking alcohol
yeah,
every single day,
yeah,
but they're doing it with people they love and they're doing it in moderation. Oh,
mm,
wait, there's that moderation thing again.
yeah.
So I just think that if we could come to a place of like, hey, sometimes just a little bit is good. And
Mhm.
we, sit like, I love hanging out with my husband, like cooking dinner, and we'll have a drink. I love a good tequila or a glass of wine. And it's enjoyable. I mean, can I enjoy it if I don't have it? Of course I can. But does it add a little bit to the experience? Sure. And then move on with your life. Like, you're not sitting there, drinking the bottle.
Exactly. The idea of wine at five resonates with me, but also being willing to have a break sometimes and know that it's okay too. I'm on day 4 of having a little break from wine, and I must say I wake up feeling a bit clearer. But my problem was it was getting later and later into the evening. So I would finish my
Yeah.
evening meetings, which I've had a few of recently. And then at 9 p.m., have instead of 5 p.m. like they do in the blue zones, 9
Yeah.
p.m. glass of wine. And
Hmm.
then it starts to have a little bit of an impact. I notice because I track my sleep that
HRV.
my heart rate stays elevated all night long. And so it's just being aware, right?
Totally. It does the same to me. I don't have a big tolerance for alcohol. And so if I have very much and if it's very late, I notice a huge effect on my HRV overnight.
Yeah,
And same thing, my heart rate will stay elevated. Also, my body temperature will stay higher. I just don't
exactly.
sleep as well.
Yeah.
And sleep is king for me.
Yes. Yes. I think it's really important what you said as well about being outdoors in the sun. I mean, we evolved to be in the sun. In fact, the different skin tones are reflective of how sunny the environment was where our ancestors spent the majority
Yeah.
of their time. Like, obviously, my ancestors lived in Northern Europe,
Mhm.
the north of the UK or somewhere around there. And so that's why our skin is light. Like
Yeah.
we want to absorb this beautiful sunlight, and yet we deprive ourselves of it. And the same with things like sleep and any other daily habits that you would recommend. So we've discussed sleep, movement, maybe a glass of wine. That's your choice.
Mhm.
What else would you recommend to people just to extend their health span?
I love, like, I'm a huge fan of, I do a morning walk every morning
Mm.
outside as soon as the sun comes up. And I realize people are going to be like, I have kids, I can't do that. Do what you can, right? I'm just
Mhm.
saying what I do, what works for me. But I am a big fan of, I do my morning walk outside, and that full spectrum light that sets the cascade for my hormones throughout the day. So
Yeah.
it starts getting dark and I'm like, oh, I'm ready for bed. Right. Because I'll have people tell me, oh, yeah, I don't get tired till like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, that's because you're just sitting under blue light for hours and hours. You get no sunlight exposure. If you
Hmm.
get sunlight exposure, you'll get tired.
Yes.
So, I think making sure you're just doing those foundational things, eating real food. We'll leave it at that. Eat real food.
Yeah.
Prioritize your protein. Make sleep a priority. It has to be, right? There's no making it up. Unfortunately, that's not how our body works. Um, good clean water, move your body every day. I believe our bodies were made to move.
Hmm.
And I think when you watch older people, you understand that a body in motion stays in motion. When you stop doing things, you stop being able to do things, right? So when people stop jumping, they stop being able to jump.
Yeah.
I about a year or two ago. So I used to always do a plyometric workout once a week. And I don't know why I got away from it. And I think it was about a year and a half ago. I went to jump off of something that was probably about 4.5 feet high. And I felt myself kind of pause, like, ooh, this might not feel comfortable. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to start jumping again. Because those are the things that keep us young, right?
Mm.
And when you watch older people, you can see who has continued to do things, just the way they move. It's so much more fluid and easy. And I'm like, yes, I'll take some of that, please.
Definitely, definitely. I was once in Vietnam and I heard that it was worthwhile to go down to the lake in Hanoi early in the morning before sunrise. And I went down there and I was like, don't really know why. And then suddenly, as
Mhm.
the sun rose, you just see there are hundreds of people around the lake practicing Tai Chi. And many of
Oh,
them were in their 70s, 80s, even older, and they were so fluid. And when you look at
yeah.
elderly people in New Zealand or in the States, uh, they're hobbling, they're
Hmm.
visibly straining just to do normal movements. And here's people just flowing beautifully first thing in the morning with that sunrise.
Yeah.
Mm,
We could take a page out of their book.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
again, Tai Chi's not hard.
No.
It's not hard, right? It just goes back to do something, like move your body and create this awareness around movement and your breath and like just be in the moment. I think in the world we live in now, that's half of it. Like just set
Yeah.
your phone aside and,
Be
take
present.
a deep breath. Yeah.
Mm. A Yale study found that people who are positive live 7 years longer than those who are not. So, how important is the body mind connection, your mindset, and any tools for developing a positive approach to life?
I couldn't agree with you more about a
Mm.
positive attitude. I'll never forget several years ago, I was listening to a podcast with an oncologist, and she was a functional medicine oncologist. And they asked her, what do you think is the most important factor for someone surviving cancer that has been given a death sentence? And she's like, oh, that's easy, attitude.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, that's a bold statement from someone that deals with, people that are dying of cancer all day long. She said, I've seen people that shouldn't have lived 2 or 3 days that made it and they're thriving because of their attitude. And I've seen people that absolutely did not have a life ending cancer that were just, no, this is it. This is how I'm going to go out. And they died. And
Mm.
I think that, our attitude determines so much about our quality of life. I really, truly believe that. And I think taking the time to be grateful is really important. It's underappreciated, which
Mm.
might sound like a funny thing to say, but to take a step back, I think most of us, like if you're someone that's listening to this podcast, you probably have a pretty good life. And I think learning to kind of embrace the hardships, because I believe that's where the growth happens.
Yeah. Growth, by its very nature, is usually uncomfortable. You have to push
Yeah.
yourself out of that comfort zone into strain or pressure. If you think about a muscle, it's not going to grow without any pressure.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. I mean, it's hormesis, right? It's not going to kill us, but it's going to make us stronger. And I think being able to embrace those things, and I do think that's where teaching yourself to do, like embracing hard things, whether it's running a marathon or doing something that's hard for you. Like I literally started running marathons because I wasn't a great runner. And I was like, this is not kicking my butt. And I really learned to love running. Like I looked forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I never, if someone would have told me that I would end up enjoying it and looking forward to it, I would have been like, you're off your rocker. But I mean, I really grew to love it. And it was just being able to embrace like, this is hard, but my body is really capable. And applying that mindset to, when you go through hard things, whether it's at work or with a spouse or, a loved one, whatever it may be, your job, understanding that most things are pretty temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And you can come through it and be okay.
Yeah. View your stressors as an opportunity. It's like going to the gym, except it's for your mind. Because you will, well, there's two ways you could go. Either you'll burn out and say, this is overwhelming and I'm a victim to my circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, I created this in somehow, so let's just try.
Yeah, I
Growth
totally
mindset.
agree. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Kimberly, what would you say are your core values? And I ask this as the author of the forthcoming Start with Values book, which I thank you for pre-ordering.
Yes, I'm excited to read it. Being in alignment with who you are, right? Showing up as who you truly are, and then doing those things. Like if you have something that you bring to the table, I feel like we have a responsibility to the world to show up as our best self, right? To help others when we can, and being willing to sometimes do things that aren't in our comfort zone, but allow us to help other people. I think that's huge. I think honesty's a huge, loyalty. Those things matter. People may not always like what we have to say, but there's a trust you build with people when they know you're honest. Loyalty, that's just it means a lot when someone's loyal to you during a hard time. Yeah, I think those are things that matter to me as a human.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I'm interested to hear how people can get in touch with you, find out more about the work that you do, maybe come in and visit you.
Yeah, so people can find me through my website. It's avita-wellness.com, and Avita is Avita. I'm probably the most active on Instagram, and my handle there is Kimberly Verbeke Wellness. Those are probably the two easiest places to find me.
Excellent. We'll include the links in the show notes, so everyone please do click the links and connect with Kimberly. Kimberly, any final thoughts for those who stuck with us all the way to the end? I
always tell people when they come to see me, you will never be sorry. Any effort you put into your health repays you 100 times over. So be willing to do that work because it becomes more and more valuable the older you get.
Kimberly, thank you. I'm excited. I'm going to go check out Peptides straight after this podcast, and I'm sure many people will do the same. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Likewise.